Can you hear me now? If you can hear me, let me know. Nope. Okay, so you can hear me now. So, unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of a... Oh, I know how to fix that. I know what's going on. Thank you for being patient. So what I need to do is turn down the volume on my monitor and then go back here and turn volume up there. Okay, so hopefully now you guys can hear me good. How is the volume level now? Okay, you guys can hear me. So let me know if the volume needs to be louder or anything else. So anyway, here we go. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is Ragnarok. Now, how this particular live streaming event is going to go. By the way, since now you can hear me, my apologies for my mix-up trying to figure out the software and the interface with YouTube and the blah, blah, blah. Part of the reason I'm doing this is I'm practicing so that I can figure out how to plan a live event and make everything work. And anyway, I'll figure it out. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get started, which is we're going to talk about Ragnarok. And as I have pointed out earlier, we're going to talk about whether or not this is a mythological event or whether this is an actual event. And so, you know, I know a lot of people want to look forward to Ragnarok happening, that at some point in the future we're going to have this cataclysmic apocalypse similar to the biblical apocalypse. I can't say, as I said, that whether that's going to happen or not, but I can tell you that there is tremendous significance in this. We talked about this a little bit in the previous live stream, but I'm going to go into depth about all the things I didn't have time to. So what I'm going to do in this live streaming chat is that I am going to go through all of the events first. So I won't be taking any questions. Please feel free to put questions in there. When I'm done talking about whatever it is I want to talk about, I will look and see if there are any questions there and that I'm inspired to answer, or if I have time to answer or whatever. If I don't get to your question, don't take it personally. It just means that for whatever reason, it's not working for me to answer that question right now. But feel free to post questions in the videos, and whenever we're online, if you have a question you want, feel free to put it in there. Just know that I may or may not get to it. It's nothing personal. So let's see, everybody on board? Let's get started. So you may be familiar with the Ragnarok myth and many of the things surrounding it. I'm just going to go through some bullet points of what the myths say is going to happen in Ragnarok. Then I'm going to go back over each of those bullet points and tell you, at the very least, an interpretation of each of those events and how I think it applies. Before, in case you're wondering, it's just water, it's not vodka. Before I get into that, I want to say that this has everything to do with the Ascension series that I'm teaching. And I won't get too much into that, but if you haven't watched it, after this, please go back and watch it. The 13 phases of Ascension and the first phase of Ascension. In the first phase of Ascension, in order to enable the human body to be able to achieve that, we have to first acknowledge that we are in fact trapped by our negative narrative. We are trapped by the story that we tell ourselves. We're trapped by our own attachments to the illusion of what life is, about what's important, all of that. When we understand that we are attached to that and that we are enslaved to that, and that all of the choices that we make which creates our futures, is based on us literally being programmed like an automaton. When we understand that, first and foremost, then we can start taking action to change that. But until we understand that, all of the desire in the world to have control of our lives is, you're going to have a lot less likelihood of being able to achieve that control. So I'm going to go in here and we'll see how that applies to this. Ragnarok and the symbolism connected to that have a very strong connection to that. So my apology for that long and boring lead up. Let's go ahead and get started here. So here are some of the events leading up to Ragnarok. According to the myth, one of the first things that's going to happen is that we're going to have 3 winters without a summer, and that the sun will be useless. So if we're talking about Ragnarok from a mythological perspective being a metaphor for transformation within the human body, I'm just going to limit it right now to the human body. These are going to be talking about events that happen in the human body when we achieve either ultimate enlightenment and or when we go through transformations on a physical and spiritual level. So first one is 3 winters without a sun. The sun is useless. And then we have 3 roosters crowing. And the roosters crow in 3 different places. So bear in mind there's the number 3 here is going to come up and we'll talk about that. The roosters crow in Earth, in Valhalla, and in Hell. Then Garm, the hound of Hell, breaks free. We talked about that in a previous video. Excuse me. Heimdal is going to blow his horn, and then Yggdrasil shakes and groans. Jormungander writhes and creates waves. Those waves release the boat Nailfar from its moorings, and Nailfar then is brought from the east as a result of Jormungander shaking the oceans and creating waves. Then Surt, the fire demon from Muspelheim, advances with his army from the south. Loki breaks free from his underground prison, and then we have events where the gods and the forces of destruction come together and fight. And we have Odin and Fenrir. Odin is swallowed by Fenrir, and Vidar, then Odin's son, then kills Fenrir. Thor and Jormungander fight to the death and kill each other. Tyr and Garm fight to the death and kill each other. Frey is killed by Surt, and then Heimdall and Loki kill each other. Then, after all of that crazy drama happens, then we have a new earth that resurfaces from the water. And then it says the eagle hunts the fish near a waterfall. And then we have a new hall in heaven called Gimli, which is there's all kinds of drink there available for whomever is still around. And then we have a new hell that is created called, let me see if I pronounce this correctly, Hvergelmir, where Nidhogg, the dragon, harasses corpses. Asgard is transformed into a place called, again, hopefully I pronounce this correctly, Idavollr. So the new Asgard is called Idavollr. Vidar and Vali come and live in the new Asgard, as well as, and Vidar and Vali are the sons of Odin, and then the sons of Thor, Modi and Magni, come to Idavollr and they bring Mjolnir with them. Balder and Hoder are released from Hell to also live in the new Asgard. And then we hear of these 2 humans, Leif and Leifthrassir, who survived the Holocaust. They emerged from a forest where they were dwelling and consuming dew. And these 2 humans repopulate the world. So, now that you know the basic events of what's happening, I'm going to go ahead and give you my information. Now, let me just stop and check. I got, I think, a 3-second delay. Are you still with me? Can you hear me? Let me see it on the chat there. Just waiting for your response. 3-second delay. Guys still there? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So, I'm at least a couple of you can hear me, so I'm going to continue. So now let's talk about what I believe this means. Again, what I'm going to be focusing on is the mythological meaning when Ragnarok happens within the individual. So before I get into that, let me just talk about that for a second. Again, talking about Ascension. I cannot stress what I'm about to tell you strongly enough. Sorry, I forgot to use the adverb. I cannot stress this to you strongly enough. When it comes to personal transformation, it is very likely going to be very challenging. The New Age idea that we are all love and light and everything is beautiful, you know, I love that too. Who doesn't like to be in a happy, good mood? That in itself is not what's usually happens when you go through transformation. It's usually a very painful, frightening process. And true transformation always involves a death. It involves a death of the ego. It involves a death of attachments. It involves a death of perception. And it may even involve a death of the body, you know, near-death experience or actual death, transforming and moving on into a new phase of existence. It's interesting to me the themes that are coming up in movies and in television lately. I'm just going to mention two. There's a Netflix series called OA, which I just finished binge watching the first aspect of it. So my picture is frozen. I'm hoping that you guys can still see me and hear me. But for whatever reason, my picture in the playback here is frozen. Let me make sure everything's working here. Okay, the software is working. I'm hoping that you guys can still see me. So, if you can, please let me know, or if there's a problem, let me know. Okay, so in these two movies that I'm talking about, OA and in what was the other one? The other one that I wanted to mention was Westworld. In OA and Westworld, what we have are the same themes of people who are coming to consciousness. And they're coming to consciousness while they are being held captive in some form or other. And while they are in this captivity, they come to first be aware that they are being held captive, and then they become aware that there is a reality beyond what they know. And they start looking for ways to do that. Let's see, is everything working all right here? Okay. Okay, good. So it's just frozen on my end. All right, so this idea of being trapped, as you know, I've talked a lot about it in some of the videos where I've come against, tried to share my thoughts about how limiting conspiracy theory mindset is. Oh, there, my picture's unfrozen now. Conspiracy theory mindsets, if you notice, they all contain within them this same theme of being trapped and seeking freedom. And within being trapped, people are coming up with techniques. For instance, blood over intent. That's a technique that people are using to try and get out of being trapped. Okay? So Ragnarok is this same scenario where the level of reality, whether it's the human being or whether it's the human race or whether it's the world or whatever, or our timeline, is trapped. Or at least there's the illusion of being trapped. And in order for us to move to the place of freedom, the current state of existence has to be destroyed. There has to be a death. So let me make that clear. So when we go through Ascension, the Ascension process is very likely going to have some aspects of it that are going to be very painful and difficult to look at. Now, the idea is to get ahead of the transformation. So Ragnarok is coming, whether it's, Ragnarok in us or in the world. The worst thing to do is to sit around and wait for it to happen. When I do rune readings, and people call me for rune readings, lots of times they don't know that I'm giving them rune readings. They just think they're talking to a psychic. They'll ask me, what's going to happen to me? And my first response is, what do you want to have happen? Because the last thing you want to do is ask me what's going to happen to you if you don't do anything. That's not your ideal future. So we want to get ahead of it, and the way we get ahead of it is through awareness right now. And that means being fearless and looking at the aspects within us that are keeping us trapped, the aspects of our, what's the word I use? The aspects of our narrative that are keeping us trapped. When we're aware of that, then we can get ahead of it. But we need to take action. So I'm going to talk to you about how this is for us. So now, having, again, wasted your time with a bunch of long-winded stuff, let's get to the nitty-gritty here. So the 3 winters without a summer, and the sun is useless. The 3 winters without a summer. So if I were to take that literally, that would mean that there would be 3 winters where when the sun came out in the summer, it didn't heat anything up. And the only thing I can think of is when there's been, mini ice ages, when we've had volcanoes erupt and it covers over the sky and the sun can't get through. Now, the sun is always representative of the soul. So if you're having a summer where the sun is shining but you're not feeling any warmth, the symbolic meaning of that is that the sun is not bringing you any spiritual connection to you. If I take that same example of having a mini ice age or a nuclear winter or whatever as the result of something in the atmosphere, it means that the sunlight is hitting the atmosphere and the heat is bouncing back out into space. So it means that there's going to be 3 time periods. And again, 3, if we're talking about 3 referring to the 3 aspects of the human being, the upper self, the lower self, and the middle self, that would mean that spirituality would not be reaching those 3 areas of our body. Just to go over it very briefly, we operate from the middle self, which is where the soul resides. This is me talking to you now as my middle self. I have an upper self, which we would call our higher self, or whatever word you want to use for that. And then we have our lower self. I'm now touching my navel. And the lower self is what contains the subconscious and the unconscious minds. So there are, at the very least, 3 time periods, or perhaps we could say the 3 areas of the human being. Spirituality you don't get the benefit of it, meaning the sun is useless, meaning you're not feeling the warmth of it. So you're feeling a spiritual emptiness, a uselessness of your spirituality. And this can be extremely frightening. So obviously that's the first sign that something's wrong. The next part, we get into the 3 roosters. The 3 roosters crow in 3 specific places: Earth, Valhalla, and Hell. This would correspond again with the 3 selves. Earth is where we live here, our soul, the center of me, my identity. So first what happens is a rooster crows. And what is a rooster? Rooster is a wake-up call. It's the earliest alarm clock known to man, is the rooster. It's time to wake up. So there's something that happens in our middle self, our conscious self, that says something's up, which is followed by the upper self, and then finally the lower self. Now, interestingly enough, as I'm talking about it, this is the exact reverse of how we receive spiritual information. When we receive spiritual information, the first thing that happens is our higher self receives it from the elves or the gods or whomever, higher spiritual forces. That information is then, it doesn't go to the middle self where the soul is. It bypasses that and goes directly to the lower self, the subconscious and the unconscious mind. That is why meditation is important, because through meditation, we are able to tap into that antenna and know what the messages are that we're receiving from our higher self or from the gods or for whomever. And then that information goes to the middle self, where we become aware. when a person is living in chaos in their life and misery, it's because the connection between the three selves has been disrupted. Now, in this case, we're talking about assuming that the connection is there, and here we have a winter of 3 years of winter where the sun doesn't have any use. It's useless. It doesn't. The sunlight of the spirit does not connect to us. And then that sets off the three the three roosters start crowing. Something's up in the three selves. All of the three selves simultaneously say something is up. So that means that when we're going through a major transformation, it's not just going to be an unconscious issue or one of the selves having an issue. All three of the selves at the same time are gonna know that something is up, that death is coming, that change is coming. Okay? So then what happens is that Garm breaks free. And if you remember from the video on the two wolves, Garm and Fenrir, you know that Garm is the absolute worst of us. Garm is the gatekeeper to the underworld. And we talked about what Garm represents. I've seen two interpretations for the name Garm. One, as I told you before, means rag. And there's another one that comes from the same root for, what's the word I want to look for? Greed, where you're going crazy with desire, you can't ever get anything fulfilled. So it's the same idea, is that, Garm, who's covered in blood, right? So what's the imagery there of somebody bleeding out? Their life is, so imagine a being that's continuously bleeding out, just covered in blood, in their own blood. And Garm is the regret, the unfulfilled desire, that which we think that we absolutely need. I'll mention a couple of people. Kanye West, as we know, is having a lot of problems. This is a guy who has all the money, all the fame. He's got all the respect, in terms of, in his industry, and he's miserable. And so these are desires that can never be met. And so that's why the illusion of having money and having fame and having, a perfect wife or whatever it is that you think is going to make you happy, when you focus on that, especially if you're coming from a place of a lack of fulfillment generally, then it just creates this desire that can never be quenched. And so Garm represents that. So once we get through this first initial part, Garm breaks free, which means that the individual starts to feel overwhelmed with loss, with regret. So many people have said that before they go through transformation, they start entering into a phase of depression. And depression, my favorite definition for depression is not being able to see a future for oneself. That can be a very horrible place to be. So all of this happens, the 3 alarm clocks go off, and then Garm is released, meaning the person starts to uncharacteristically feel horrifically deprived and full of fear and regret and desire. This gets Heimdall's attention. Heimdall blows his horn. So when Heimdall blows his horn, basically the warriors of Odin, the residents of Valhalla, those who died in battle, those who in the afterlife are there to fight for the power of conscious awareness, which is what Odin is. Heimdall blows his horn, which is the battle cry. They know, they know it's time to put on the armor. It's battle time. We've been waiting thousands of decades for this, and now it's here. It's time to go off and fight. It's a futile battle because they're going to lose. Both sides are going to destroy each other, but this is who they are. And so we have to still, no matter how bad things get or whatever is going to happen, we still have to constantly strive and battle for conscious awareness and for bringing peace and knowledge to the entire human race. So Odin's army breaks free Odin's army is now mobilized as a result of Heimdall blowing his horn. Thank you, by the way. Even though I'm not responding to what you're saying here, it's good for me to see that you guys are here and involved. Anyway, so I want to keep going here. So Heimdall blows his horn, and then Yggdrasil shakes and groans. Yggdrasil is the spinal cord in the human body. If you look at just the spinal cord and the nerves, it looks like tree and tree branches. And so this means that the person's kundalini, whether they have worked on their kundalini or not, this is a great thing why it's important to do exercise that awaken kundalini, because when kundalini awakens on its own without any preparation, that's what happens. You're just going to shake. It's going to be it's very, people have gone through it will tell you it's a horrible experience. And there are people who actually suffer from what's called kundalini sickness. It doesn't mean that they're spiritual. It actually means something else is really off balance. But when the kundalini goes off like that, the whole spinal column shakes. In fact, interestingly enough, one of the names for the spiritual energy of a person is Shakti. Shakti in the Vedic tradition also means spear. Now, if you've ever held a spear in your hand and you shake it, just like this, it goes. And that's exactly what happens with the spinal cord when the kundalini is awakened. Shakti, by the way, comes from the same English word for shake, to shake something. So Shakti means the energy that shakes you. So, see all the great little tidbits you get from listening to me, all this stuff that I have locked away in my brain pan here that I just don't have room to write it all down? That's why I'm doing this kind of stuff, so I can get it all out. Anyway, so Yggdrasil shakes and groans. Then Jormungander writhes and creates waves. Okay, so Jormungander is limitation. Now, he's seen as a demon. He's seen as a force of evil. And it is absolutely true that we want to fight against limitation. Nobody wants to be limited in their lives. And this is why Thor is constantly fighting with Jormungander. Because Thor, as we talked about, is a god who breaks down barriers. He lives in between the macro and the micro. When you look at physics, the electromagnetic force doesn't function on either of those levels. And so Thor lives in between the worlds, literally, and as a result keeps the two worlds apart and keeps them functioning well. So he doesn't let the limitation of gravity, for instance, keep me from falling through my chair. He provides a barrier between the force of gravity that's trying to pull us all down to the center of the earth and allows me to sit in my chair. So we can use gravity and walk on it and function with it. This is how one of the ways that Thor protects the human race. But he fights against that limitation, and he can't ever win. And it's good that he doesn't win, because if he did, as you'll see, if he's able to destroy Jormungander, the entire world would fall to pieces. I mean, everything would self-destruct. But that's his nature, and we appreciate him for that. So Jormungander writhes and creates waves. So the limitations are beginning to fall apart. The laws of macro physics, I hope I'm saying that right, that keep the world together are starting to fall apart. So that means within the human being, our limitations are not going to work anymore. When you go through the process of ascension, those things that you identify with, those limitations, positive or negative, that you take comfort in, are going to start coming apart at the seams. Now, the next thing, I love this next part. The symbolism here is amazing. And if you know how to understand symbolism, you're going to see how tremendously powerful this next part is. So when our limitations start coming apart, it creates waves. What are waves? Ocean always represents emotional instincts. You cannot separate instincts and emotion. And by the way, you can't separate emotion from anything. Anybody who claims that they are emotionless or makes decisions without emotion is either ignorant or lying. Now, you may have an awareness of your emotions. That's different. Like I said, there's no such thing as somebody who doesn't have an agenda. It's those who know what their agendas are. Excuse me. Those who are unconscious of their agendas, which are most people, they're the most dangerous, and you can't reason with those people because all they do is just react with emotion. You can't talk logically with them. You can talk logically with somebody who is aware of their emotional agendas, because they'll be able to hear what you say and they'll go, that may be true, or they'll say something like, I don't know if in other words, if somebody says, you're a very angry person, somebody who's really operating from that understanding will go, I'm not aware of that at the moment, but it may be true. If it's true, I'm not aware of it. That's somebody who's really thinking critically. Anyway, I digressed. So when Jormungander writhes and creates waves, emotions from our instincts are starting to go crazy, then the boat Nailfar is released from its moorings and starts sailing from the east, which is the realm of the giants, the realm of limitation, the realm of stagnation, the realm of unconsciousness. The boat Nailfar is made from the fingernails of the dead. Now, what the heck does that mean? The fingernails of the dead. I love this. This is my favorite symbol in this whole talk we're going to have tonight. What do you use your fingernails for? Holding on to things. You're falling off a cliff, you're going to want to stick your fingernails in the side of the cliff. You're holding on. These aren't just fingernails, they're the fingernails of the dead. From the people of the underworld. So who ends up in the underworld? The people who end up in the underworld are people who have unfulfilled desires. That's why Garm is there guarding the place. Because he's only going to let people in there who have unfulfilled desires. He's going to smell it on them. He's all about it. He soaks it up. He's covered in it. So the fingernails of those who died not having achieved their desires and are still attached to the illusion of their desires. The boat made from the fingernails of the people in the underworld who still are hanging on. So it means those things that you're still hanging on to are going to rise literally to the surface with the tide on the boat of Nailfar. So you see what's happening. Jormungander, which is our limitation, shakes, creates emotional waves, which brings up all of our unfulfilled desires, and it's going to come sailing right at us. So if you've spent your life spending a lot of time trying to avoid those things, which a lot of us do, I'm okay without that, or I'm okay, whatever, now you're not going to be able to hide it from yourself, because you have to evolve. And evolution means that you are going to have to let go of those things, and before you let go of them, you got to be conscious of them. So this is the process of conscious awareness. It's not all, cookies and milk or whatever. There's going to be some bitter pills in there. That's why it's important to be doing spiritual work all the time so that you can stay ahead of it. Because if you don't stay ahead of it, the symbolism is great. The wave is going to come and crash on the shore. And, just like a tidal wave, not a regular wave, but a tidal wave where the water comes in and it just floods. You're going to get flooded. And flooding is a big part of what happens here, by the way. And that means that you're overwhelmed with the emotional reactions you have to your own attachments, your own agendas, your own instincts. Okay, so now, when all this happens, the individual is most likely going through some very difficult times. And now Surt and his army. Surt is the armies of chaos. What's the word I'm looking for? I forget the word. It's a scientific word. Anyway. But when Surt advances, it means chaos is coming. Pure chaos. And if you've ever known people who have chaotic lives, right? people who are constantly talking about how they want this and that in their life, but their life is pure chaos. It's because all of the other things that we've talked about are in full play. It means these are people who do not have a conscious awareness of all of their unconscious issues. And so they are just being tossed around by this. It's pure chaos. And so Surt advances, and he's going to bring chaos from the south, which is the realm of fire. And then Loki breaks free. Now, Loki, my friend, is going to come to our aid. This is what people need to understand about Loki. If we didn't have Loki in this myth, all we would have is that the rest of the world went into chaos. The human being goes into endless chaos. And so Loki is the agent of evolution. Loki is your best friend. And like your best friend, he is going to give you the bitter medicine. And so when all of this happens and all of the chaos starts to break free and Loki sees it's time, what he's doing is he's saying that chaos is about to destroy that individual. If we look at it in terms of the whole mythology of it, Loki, trapped in his cave, sees that his beautiful world, his beautiful universe is about to be destroyed. And he breaks free to do what? To do what he does best. He takes our limitations, he takes the negative aspects of ourselves and uses them to help us achieve awareness, to achieve enlightenment, to achieve ascension. So he is absolutely necessary. So he breaks free. And then we have the clash of all of the deities that come together. So we talked before, the last time we talked about Odin and Fenrir, and that Fenrir, if you haven't, go back and watch the videos that I've done about it. I won't take up too much time focusing on Fenrir today. But Fenrir is the fame wolf, and what he represents is our aspirations and our ego. And the gods see that Fenrir has the ability to swallow the sun and the moon and the whole universe. That means that our ambition, our ego, has the ability to swallow everything. So they have to tie him up with the rope of subtlety and profundity. Subtle profundity is what keeps the ego in check. And when Fenrir is bound up, he creates the river of hope, which means that our ambitions are aligned. And when our ambitions are aligned, our ego is aligned, we have hope. So when Fenrir is now, breaks free, then that means that the ego, our self, is dying. Our idea of who we are is about to die. And so it makes a last-ditch effort to assert itself, and it will kill us. And if again, I mentioned a couple of people, or at least one person, where their ego is out of control. You can die from an out-of-control ego. It can absolutely kill you. So now we have Odin and Fenrir, and I appreciate the last time we did this because somebody helped me come to a realization, which is that, I said that Odin doesn't have an ego, and somebody said he absolutely does, and I thought about it, and I realized, you're right. Odin is the ego that sacrifices itself, as opposed to the ego that aggrandizes itself. And if Odin were allowed to survive, right, then we wouldn't go through the death. The death has to be the death of the ego. So Odin sacrifices himself again to the destructive part of the ego. He allows himself to be swallowed. If any of you think that Odin couldn't have defeated Fenrir, then you and I have a different idea of Odin. He chose to allow himself to be sacrificed. I guess if you look at it, he's climbing inside of the negative ego so he can transform it from within. And then his son Vidar, which means openness, he comes along and he opens the mouth of Fenrir, literally tears his jaw open, kills him that way. So it means that, of Vidar being the son of Odin, meaning, Odin himself. The act of Odin being swallowed by Fenrir means that from the inside, Odin is going to open up the ego, which means it'll be destroyed. The person has to die. Their identity has to die. I could go on and on about that, but I won't take up more of your time on that one. Maybe we'll do an entire session just on that. And then we have Thor and Jormungander. Jormungander, we've talked about that, is limitation. Thor breaks through the limitations. And so they have to come together and destroy each other, because otherwise, if they don't, if they just keep fighting and nobody wins, then we just keep the same universe. Within ourselves, the same thing happens. We don't evolve past who we are. So they have to kill each other. They have to destroy each other. And we've already talked about that. Then we have Tyr and Garm. We talked a little bit about that, but Tyr is the highest awareness, which is why he's justice. Why, when you talk about Tyr, he's victory. Victory not just in the sense of I won over my enemies, but victory in the sense of pure conscious awareness, complete awareness. Which again is why Odin becomes the head of the gods. Originally, if we go by the historical evidence, the king of the gods was Tyr. Jupiter, in the Roman religion it would be Jupiter, Deus Piter. You get that same tiu, that same root of tiu. The word Zeus is actually not his name. His name is Di. And a temple to Zeus is Dion. So his name is Di. Deus, tiu. This idea of the highest awareness has to go up against the lowest awareness, which is Garm. Pure, just misery, pure attachment, pure regret, all of our unfulfilled illusionary desires. Tyr and Garm have to destroy each other. And then we have Heimdal and Loki. We talked about that too, but Heimdal is the gatekeeper of the crown chakra, which means that your soul can't leave as long as Heimdal is there guarding it. He's there, he's to preserve you, to keep you at your highest level of awareness, but to keep you in the body. That's his job. So Loki, who is an agent of ultimate transformation, which is death and resurrection, Loki and Heimdal have to kill each other. Otherwise, again, things don't evolve. And then we get to the last part. Now we get to the beautiful part of it, which is the earth resurfaces from water. Remember what water signifies. Water signifies emotion, especially emotion. Water by itself represents emotion, but the sea represents the emotions connected to our instincts, our lower drives. So the earth resurfaces, meaning that being overwhelmed with all that emotion, that chaos, that craziness, now our soul emerges from that, and is in, the water is still there, the emotion is still there, but it's not flooding us. We're not overwhelmed. By the way, dreams of drowning are always about feeling overwhelmed by your emotions, like your emotions are drowning you. And then we have the eagle hunting the fish. The eagle in all shamanic mythology represents the spirit, the highest realm of the spirit. And so here we have the highest realm of the spirit. The eagle is doing what it does. It hunts the fish. And what is the fish? The fish is wisdom. And here we have the highest awareness hunting for wisdom again. So it's a higher level of spiritual awareness. And we have a hall in heaven called Gimle, which I have to be honest, I don't know a heck of a lot about it, so I'm not going to talk about it because I want to talk about things intelligently. Hvelgrimir is the new hell where Nidhogg harasses corpses. He doesn't harass the souls of the dead, he's harassing corpses. It's like each, the underworld that we have now isn't full of corpses, it's full of the dead. It's full of the souls of the dead. What is a corpse? It's a further creation. So I have to say, I would have to do some journeying, or maybe not, maybe I don't want to go there, but do some more meditation to know what that means. But it's a heightened level. I mean, we're taking things to an extreme. The highs are getting higher and the lows are getting lower. we have Vidar and Vali, who are the sons of Odin, and they come to the new Asgard, which is called Idavolur. I need to look up what the name of that means. I'm sure it's significant, but I don't know what that is at this time. But Vidar and Vali are the sons of Odin, and they are the purified aspects of the ego, which is what Odin is. If we go by what we've been talking about and what other people have said, the heightened, the purified aspect. So, Odin always travels. Have you noticed that? Odin is traveling everywhere. He goes to all of the worlds. Why? Because he's a continual learner. Odin is connected with Mercury, the planet Mercury, and Mercury is the intellect. So Odin is the spiritualized intellect, which is why he was able to see the runes, that the runes revealed themselves to him. So when he was sacrificing himself on the Tree of Life, he's also sacrificing himself to learn, get deeper spiritual knowledge. So these are the higher aspects of that now that have resulted. Modi and Magni are they're basically the same words. Modi and Magni both mean strength. You can say strength and power, however you want to look at it, but the two aspects of power, of spiritual power, of the electromagnetic force. It's a higher vibration of the electromagnetic force, and these are the sons of Thor. So these are really the two aspects of Thor. Vidar and Vali are Odin, and Modi and Magni are Thor. And these are taken to the new Asgard, Idavolur. Balder and Hodor are released from hell. So Balder is the soul. I'll talk about this, and then maybe I'll see if there's any questions, if you guys are still here. But Balder is the soul. And Balder, I know that there's some heathen sects out there that are worshiping and praying for the release of Balder from hell. If that happens, you have to die. So be careful about that. And as we know from the myths, Balder is very happy in the underworld. And this represents the soul being encased in human flesh, in the underworld, under the earth of the flesh here. This is why Balder dies. Balder dying means the soul, your soul, incarnating in human flesh. And again, Loki, who is the spearhead of evolution, if you know the myth. If you don't know the myth, we'll have to talk about it. But Loki is the only being in the universe that did not weep for Balder. Everybody else wept for Balder. Means that the universe weeps at the loss of the soul coming down into human flesh. The other beings of the universe want to experience you on a spiritual level, want to experience your soul. So they weep for you. Not because they're sad for you, but because they're going to miss you. They're going to miss your pure spiritual essence. The only person who didn't was Loki. Because as you know, the myth, the gods were not taking Balder seriously, and because nothing could touch him, meaning the soul is infinite, the soul is immortal, the soul is the highest of everything, is complete infinity. Your soul, that the gods are doing, they're sitting there drinking mead and they're throwing spears at him and hucking rocks at him and, knives and rakes and, antlers, whatever. And they're enjoying the show, having it bounce off, and they're not appreciating that the soul is there. They're drinking and partying and using him as a party favor. And Loki does not like that. That's why he designs to have Balder killed by ignorance. He's saying your ignorance is killing the soul, which is true even in this part of reality. I could go on and on about all of these subjects for a very long time. But the point being is that after Ragnarok, the soul emerges. It emerges from the underworld. Meaning that the soul has achieved what it wants to achieve in this life and rises to the highest level of existence, to infinity again, to a new existence. It has evolved. So, and then we're left with the two humans, Leaf and Leafthrosir. They emerge from the forest where they consume dew. Now, this is another long subject, but dew is representative of the nectar of immortality. Very briefly, the way I know this is that the myths surrounding Indra, which is the same deity as Thor in the Vedic tradition, comes from the same root word, Inthura, and we have Thunar, same deity, separated by perhaps tens of thousands of years in the Indo-European tradition. In that tradition, Indra lives on the dew of Soma, which is the moon. The moon is not only the mind, but it's representative of life force energy and the nurturing aspect of life force energy, which is why if you really want to get close to Thor or Indra, you need to be doing things like Qigong, because you need to be able to, like Thor, drink a lot of mead, which is has the same connection. Dew and mead have the same kind of representation, symbology, which is life force energy. So they consume the dew. Means that they live directly off of life force energy. Means they live off of meditation. They live off of spiritual connection. They get their nourishment directly from worshiping nature and the gods. These are the people who will survive. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll sort of end on this topic here, and I'll open it up for questions if you guys are still around. I haven't even bothered to look, but we are in the new phase, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it the Aquarian Age, whatever you want to call it, we have passed into that. All of the stuff, 2012, Age of Aquarius, all of these things that said that we were coming to it, we passed it. 2012, something did happen. And like, the changing of seasons, it takes a little time before we feel the effects of it. It's here. It's here now. And so a lot of these things I've mentioned may be happening to you. And if it is, it means that you are sensing that you are ready for ascension, that ascension is coming. So we have to take action in order to get ahead of it, in order to be, for me, I like to surf. We want to surf that wave instead of have that giant thing crash on top of us. And so we need to get ahead of it. And those people that choose to hold on to the old ways of thinking are going to have tremendous difficulties and challenges. And I'm talking on all levels, monetarily, personally, physically. You're going to see people, I'm not wishing this on anybody, but you are going to see people, more and more people start losing their mind and really flipping out, because they're holding on to these old things, and Ragnarok is happening to them. And they're holding on to their old ideas of who they are. You've got to open your mind. You've got to be an open-minded person. People with closed minds will not survive this shift. So don't worry, I'm not wishing anything negative on anybody. It just means do your spiritual work to the best of your ability. And first of all, trust. I cannot emphasize this enough. You have to trust the universe. Trust the gods. Don't buy into the fear. There's a lot of fear running around, and it's going to increase. Don't buy into it. And those who don't buy into it and follow this and trust and do this work, you are going to ride this out much more easily. You will find that you will gain a lot more success. A lot of people who have been, failures are now, you're going to see people being more happy and more successful, those that do what I'm suggesting. So, having said that, I think I've talked enough. We've got a few minutes left, barely got through an hour. So, I'm going to go ahead and just open it up for questions if you guys are still here. So let me scroll through and see if there's any questions. Thank you for your patience. Are the rooster crows alarms or announcements of impending dawn? T6C. That's a perfect way of putting it. I'd say they're both. That's a more positive way of looking at it. I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, and you talked about, you made some other great comments here. Let's see. Thanks for people saying nice things about me. I appreciate that. Ugh. I'm going to try and stay away from political. Let's try and stay away from anything political. Trust me, a lot of you guys, if you knew what my politics were, you probably wouldn't stay on my channel. Entropy. That was the word I was looking for. I didn't want to, I realize now that if I talked about entropy, I was going to launch into a political discussion, which would have pissed a lot of people off. But yeah, basically we're talking about entropy, that once the forces of chaos are released, you can never get that power back. It's not something you can get back. It's out there, it's over, damage is done. And so the forces of entropy mean once they're released, that cat is out of the bag, it's never going back in. Let's see. Yep, so I'm seeing here we've got two sides of the political coin. Yes, Mary, it is my intention to make sure that everybody knows ahead of time. I tried to do it now, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I will try and make sure that I let you guys know when it's coming. Thank you, Dustin. Let's see here. Any thoughts on Skirmir Utgarda Loki? I do have some thoughts about it, but I'd rather kind of do a little more thought and meditation and research on it so I can talk about it intelligently. Tyr gets his hand bitten by Fenrir. What is the symbolism? I was asked that before. I'll share an understanding about that. So Tyr is a warrior. Most warriors are right-handed. By the way, do you know why most people are right-handed, including myself? It comes from evolution. Literally tens of thousands of years of people hunting with spears. Try and throw a baseball left-handed if you're right-handed. It just won't work. Right-handed, great. Same thing with a spear. So that's why people have one hand stronger than the other. Right-handed connects to the left brain, which is the part of the brain that hunts, which is focuses. That's why men can't do more than one thing at a time, because they're very left-brained. They have a smaller corpus callosum, which connects the two halves of the brain. Women have a larger corpus callosum, which means that they can function on multiple levels, generally speaking, better than men. And so Tyr is right-handed. He's a warrior. And so he uses his sword with his right hand. What he is doing is that he is saying that in order to allow Fenrir, the ego, to be controlled, our highest awareness, which is Tyr, is constantly working to keep our ego bottled up in a way that makes it productive, which means that he gives all of his power to that. So when people worship Tyr as this mighty war god, they don't understand the symbolism. So if you want to declare war on your neighbor and you want to use Tyr, you better be clear about the fact that you are doing it to enhance their righteousness. If you're doing it because you hate them and you want to kill them, you don't know who Tyr is. Period. End of story. I'll give you another thing about the spear. We're talking about the right hand and the spear. When the Germanic pre-Christian tribal warriors, when they went to war with other people, they paid their opponents the highest compliment, the highest respect. They would get the strongest warrior on their side and put the biggest spear in his hand, and he would heave that spear over the heads of the opposing army. He was doing it to protect them because he said, our intention is to kill you, but we want you, you brave souls who are giving up your life to defend your land. We want you to go to Valhalla. So any warmongers out there, I'm going to get self-righteous and get on my soapbox. Any warmongers out there, if you love the idea of war, then the first thing that has to be on your mind is the spiritual awareness of the people you are fighting. And if you do not have respect for them, you are not a warrior. You're a murderer. Ooh, did I step on some toes? Got to be careful when you ask me some of these questions. Okay, so let's see, what else? Well, boy, I sure got emotional on that one. Earlier, you spoke about what people do to connect with Thor, but what about connecting with Tyr? Does that have to do with the highest awareness? Yes. Thank you for taking time sharing this with us. Very thoughtful. Makes sense to me. Do you happen to know much about Uller? I've been looking into Uller. I do have some thoughts, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Because again, I want to have some profundity. I don't want to just be superficial about it. So anyway, that's it. I think we've gotten through the hour, and I think I have gotten off as much as I'm capable of tonight. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for watching and being part of this. Thank you for, I'm really enjoying where the channel is going, and I want it to continue. And the way you can help me with that is watch the videos, of course, comment, like, share it if you have something you really like, post it on Facebook or something, get the word out there so you can get more people here to enjoy the channel if you think this is something that is beneficial. Just a little plug for myself. I do give personal sessions if you want to talk to me personally. I do give personal sessions. I do charge for that, just to let you know. We do have, I do give Vedic astrological readings, and you can look at some of the videos to find out what that is. And I still do have a couple of openings for apprentices, which means that I work with you for 1 hour a week, and we go in 1 month increments. So you can look up that on the channel as well. Having said that, my friends, unless there's any pressing question that I want to answer, nope. This will be archived so you can watch it, and that's it for now. So thank you so much, and until next time, may the gods of our ancestors be with all of us, and may you may you go through your own personal Ragnarok in as smooth and as an empowering and inspiring a fashion as possible. Thank you. Oh, before I forget, look at the videos about Ascension. Going in 13-month process. We're still in the first month, so you can come on board for this first month, and then we're going to go through a different phase of Ascension for the next 13 months. So, okay, so that's it for now, my friends. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. So.